Monty, this seems strange to me. The movies had that movie thing, but nonsense has a welcome ring. Heroes don't come easy.
Welcome to the Auditory Osmosis Studios. This is one of your hosts, Nick Ritter, with his always here sidekick, Mr.
Ether Hawkins, his trusty sidekick, his always here sidekick. I like that too.
From the bosoms of the Midwest, or the bowels of the Midwest, or like the breadbasket of the Midwest. This is episode 23.
The ultimate grain belt. That's a beer.
It's not the ultimate grain belt. Maybe we should sell that to him. We came up with the
Speaking though of the ultimate grain belt,
let's say you went to the insert your state here fair, didn't you?
Well, don't just say that. There's something more special. It isn't really nonchalant.
I heard you went to the Minnesota State Fair.
Correction, the Great Minnesota Get-Together.
Well, that is the Great Minnesota Get-Together, correct, yes.
And
let me hear about it.
Okay, well, I walked in. There was a large police presence and a sea of people from sea to shining sea.
Aye.
There was loads of vendors, as usual. Overpriced food, delicious food, unhealthy food, overpriced drinks, delicious drinks, unhealthy drinks. You know, the categories we cover when you go to the state fair. But there was one thing in particular that really buzzed my noggin.
It sank your opponent's battleship?
Exactly. I want everybody, if you get a chance, maybe you have a state fair around you. I know you do if you're in the States. Otherwise, import some grain belt. I don't know if they're going to make this a marketable drink for everyone, but I went to the grain belt booth, and they had, among all the other tasty treats, they had, for the first time, to my knowledge anyways,
first time ever,
blueberry beer, right? You think it's like a myth, but no, it was blueberry beer with some type of crushed ice frothing on the top, just kind of spilling over. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really delicious. This is everything they said it was going to be. And the only problem I had was it was very overpriced. But what do you expect? You know, you're coming to the Great Minnesota Get-Together, and you have to have cash. None of these vendors are going to accept your card. So, you know, you got these Orwellian little kiosks where you're like, I got to put my card in to get my information. And then they charge you, you know, to take money out of your own bank account. But it was worth every drip and every penny.
Every drip of blood.
Every drip of blood.
Every drop. Every drop
away
of blood.
For my fiat currency. But yeah, I mean, my paper money was exchanged, and I think it was a fair exchange. Okay. The blueberry beer. Have you had a chance to have anything like this? Because I originally thought blueberry drinks, blueberry wine, etc., was something from Europe.
I've made a blueberry beer before. I've also made a raspberry beer, which is called a framboise.
How does that work? Can you describe that for the listeners?
What, the brewing process?
Yeah, the brewing process.
Well, layman, just fermentation makes, alcohol. So it's a byproduct of fermentation. And you need something to ferment, and you add a little sugar so it goes a little better.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is how hooch works. If you ever find yourself in a conundrum, imprisoned behind bars, you can make, through fruit, fermentation, alcohol.
Roger that. So we did a framboise, which is a raspberry beer. Again, I was going to say, sorry, I have a little cold.
A flamboyant framboise.
Yeah, I mean, you can call it that. We should make a flamboyant framboise. What's the piano player's name? Liberace.
There you go.
We'll
Play
call
some
it
Liberace and make a flamboyant flambra.
the flamboyant framboise, which is the Liberace raspberry. Ooh, we got it. Okay, how about this for a state fair, right?
Okay.
Okay, so what we would do is we'd set up like 6 kiosks all around the place, but we'd sell a little wristband, okay? And this wristband would be $5, but you could go to any of those kiosks
I'm following you.
and you could have all the ranch dressing you need throughout the day.
Well, I think ketchup. Well, okay, ranch is a start, but ketchup, you have to have ketchup, right? Because that's the American sauce,
Ooh, we'll call it the condiment corner.
the condiment corner. You see, I was thinking more.
And we'll have it on every corner, but you can pay for some of the special sauces.
One problem with the state fair, beyond being overpriced, I think they need a little bit more of a pretentious touch, if you will.
Do you think so?
I want to have, because I mean, you go for the food, right? A lot of people do. You always get the cheese curds. What about a curry and curds stand? You get the pretentious people ordering the curry, and you get the people who know nothing and have yet to develop their palate. They get the curds. So you please both audiences. And that's one thing I think that is lacking from the state fair. They do not really satisfy the taste buds of the more sophisticated eater.
Well, what do you think about this? As me and a buddy have came up with this a long time ago, but it's just mussels and fries. And you just have like 5 different types of mussels, and then it's served over a bed of French fries.
That's interesting. Now, would the mussels be without the shell, or?
No, they'd be with the shell, and you just serve it all over the fries because you'd have the sauce inside all the little open shells, and it would get on the French fry.
I was going to say, without the shell, that would be, at least to the eye, kind of like a loaded, gross potato.
Right. Yeah, that would look really bad. A bunch of little vaginas on a bunch of shafts.
But I'm with you. I'm with you with the shells with the fries. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think that would work. That's an upscale, and a little bit more upscale.
Yeah, and I'd like to see a push for, and maybe I missed it. There's a lot of ground to cover, at least at our state fair. I don't know how it is. Is Minnesota? See, I hear Texas has the largest state fair, but I hear Minnesota.
Texas has the most land for the state fair, but it's nothing like Minnesota's. I don't think there's any. I mean,
Minnesota is quite renowned.
I don't think there's any state fair like Minnesota, and that's been said by critics of state. You know what I mean? Like the people that actually give a fuck about state fairs and tour the states to do this.
Have you ever met anybody who actually gives a fuck about a state fair? You'd be in the car and he's like, "Hey man, don't talk shit about the state fair."
Probably. I mean, I've been working in a kitchen and somebody said, "Oh, the state fair, Minnesota's the best, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, okay, sorry, dude. Sorry.
Are there connoisseurs of state fair food? There has to be.
There has to be, but you have to realize is the shitty part about all that is half the time they're overweight and they eat that shit all the time. So
right.
Sorry to say this, but it's true.
They get to walk off the calories though, so there's a reward in their dietary habits. They get to consume X amount of calories, and then they're like, "Well, we're gonna walk it off and go look at this."
Dude, I probably consume 4,000 a day.
Yeah, I mean, I actually personally, Mr. Hawkins, I like to be on my specific diet, and you know what that kind of entails. But I used to consume a large amount of calories.
Roger that.
Today, though, when I was at the state fair, and we need a booth. We really need to expand our audience, and we keep promising video. We're going to get to it, folks. We're going to get to the video, and don't worry. I know you you've been marking your calendars and you're sending us letters, and it's fine. I throw the letters in the garbage. I tell Nick, Mr. Ritter here, to reply to him when he gets time. And I don't know if he ever finds time. And I don't really double check to see if he sends out letters.
You always throw them away before I can read them to make a reply.
It depends. I like to judge things by the postage, like the stamps. If it's not an expensive stamp, what do you expect me to open it up? Come on, people, have some class. But we have to expand. And what better way with the Minnesota State Fair than to get the word out there? If you're, folks, listeners out there, if you're at the Minnesota State Fair, just why don't you nudge? I mean, there's police presence, right? Nudge a police officer and just say, hey, have you listened to Auditory Osmosis? It's great.
It's true.
Whenever you run into somebody, a random pedestrian, and today, for instance, it was senior day, right? A lot of old folks there. It's really easy to target pedestrians if they're slow moving.
True.
Variables.
We need to get like a duster airplane, but like make it spread flyers.
But drop that and drop cards. Hey, listen to Auditory Osmosis.
Yeah.
And you know what? We also, under the guise to get our license, we should say we're fighting Zika with our airplanes that are spraying for Zika mosquitoes, but we're really just dropping Auditory Osmosis cards over the State Fair in Minnesota.
Which kills all the mosquitoes when it's cold.
Right. And it informs the populace.
The whole.
Right. I mean, if you go through our catalog of episodes, what are we on? Episode 23. Can you imagine the average Auditory Osmosis listener? I guarantee you that their IQ is above average.
Oh, here we go.
I mean, can you imagine? Think of the topics we've covered. From the infamous panopticon to the possibilities of telepathy.
We're kind of everywhere, but at the same time, we always bring it back. It's always circular.
We're everywhere but nowhere. Therefore, we're in the center.
We're somewhere but nowhere. Sometimes we're there, but we're actually over there.
But I had a good time at the State Fair. And, Mr. Ritter, I know you're working hard, but I want you to take some time. Hey, man, take a few on me. Take some money out of the company and get yourself a blueberry Northeast or grain belt. Sorry, not Northeast. Although Northeast is good. Get yourself a blueberry grain belt beer.
I'll do that right after my doctor's appointment tomorrow.
Good. And they're not going to wheel in any extra heart monitor equipment and tell you that your heart is accelerating beyond comprehension.
Yeah, that was funny. I think we told that story before, but I'm not sure. Yes, I hope they don't have to do so. I'm going to do breathing techniques to keep it real nice and low.
Just very calm.
Yeah, just get very calm before I get in there. But I have to see a psychologist tomorrow because I've been trying to get basically on a pain management kind of regiment. Or is that what you call it?
Regiment?
Regiment, sorry, thank you. I knew I had it wrong.
Maybe you were going crazy.
No. So I have to go do that to make sure. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what they do, but I've had a few visits lately because my hand's been really bothering me, but we'll find out.
Yeah, that's tomorrow. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have, and for listeners at home, my colleague here, he has an injury to his hand, which involves the tendon, correct?
Yep.
So, I mean, what's that old, is it a myth? Does weather affect your pain?
Oh, absolutely. You can even, just humidity affects pain.
I mean, that's incredible.
Well, anything that can cause inflammation. And then with the high ragweed right now, I have a cold, and so my whole body's just trying to fight off everything.
Right. It's under attack.
Yeah, dude, it sucks.
Yeah, there's a strange summer cold going around actually right now, and I've been trying to avoid it, but
It's like high ragweed, I think, is what's going on right now. But it's nice. I don't mind. It's the days have been awesome, and there's been lots of things to do outside.
Well, and I can't wait for September because the bugs die down and I can finally get my hammock out
Ooh.
of the enclosure I have it in currently, and experience the great outdoors. I do have a bug net. I didn't have time between the podcast, yelling at you. I didn't have time to get out there.
Yeah, why'd you yell at me? I don't understand.
Well, I get angry, and
But it wasn't even. It was like gibberish.
well, yeah. I mean, sometimes I don't know how to make words that make sense to other people.
Right.
But my anger reaches a level. When you're losing weight rapidly, like I am, right, with bulimia and everything, and my dietary habits.
Are you almost done with that, by the way?
Yeah, I am actually. I experience mood swings, and these mood swings are, at least to my knowledge, completely natural. If you consider my dietary habits, if you consider my lifestyle, I live a high octane lifestyle, and I don't really mean that I guzzle gasoline.
I don't much care for your lifestyle, but you're a good man.
And Sling Blade, it's a good movie, but we have to consider anytime we experience anger, we have to kind of break that down and take a few steps back and say, hey, maybe this person is experiencing something that stems from his lifestyle. And instead of placing blame on the person's action, place blame on the person's lifestyle. And I'm just kind of deflecting blame here because the truth of the matter is I shouldn't be angry at you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you bought in for a second to my explanation right there, which was kind of convoluted, but I was trying to scapegoat my behavior and place the blame on my lifestyle. But then in my mind, I went full circle and I thought, Mr. Hawkins, your lifestyle is directly connected to your anger.
It's
so you
another
see,
one of those full circle things.
we do this a lot, but even then, you got to be willing to come to terms with sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong. And that there is a bunch of gibberish.
That's exactly. It's almost what you yelled at me, but there was a lot more like kind of things like that. I wish I could play the recording, but I save those just in case.
If you were bilingual, what language would it be? I'm just reading off a sheet here. No, but really, I mean, like for me, I would love to learn Latin and Greek because I feel like our language would have more meaning if I could understand the linguistic variations through Latin and Greek.
Mm-hmm. Well, Latin would be cool. I do kind of like, I dig Croatian, of course, because I do know a little Croatian. And then Spanish, I really like.
I think Russian is really cool, like speech-wise. It sounds neat.
Mm-hmm. I think I want Portuguese, though. I want to learn Portuguese real bad.
Why Portuguese?
Because of jiu-jitsu and just because Portuguese it's such a cool language. It's such like a laid back kind of talking shit but laid back at the same time kind of language. It's so cool.
Speaking of jiu-jitsu, let's because I mean I've been reflecting. Imagine that, Ether Hawkins taking time to reflect. And sometimes I am the instigator, the person who pushes the topics to the listener. But I think this episode, let's explore Mr. Ritter's area of expertise. What are some of the areas? We've had a food episode, but what are the interests of Mr. Ritter? And describe to the listeners what got you into those areas of interest.
I mean, my favorite sport right now is definitely MMA, and it beat out, all of them. Football, baseball. Of course, I wasn't really a big baseball fan. I watch hockey as much as I can now, just because. But football is I just see it as stupid now. I don't understand, but I don't know why I did the switch. But I'm just so into MMA and jiu-jitsu, like being in jiu-jitsu and actually going, which I don't go anymore. I haven't went for a little while. Got expensive, but it's just, I guess, being in jiu-jitsu and being, or probably in any martial art, it helps you. It really helps you think and like put things into perspective. Like I've said it before, and then I guess I know Joe Rogan has said somewhere of the same thing, but it's true. It's you're surrounded by murderers, and they don't kill you. Like you're
Right.
but you're still fighting for your life, because every time you're choked out, you're done. You know what I mean? Or every time you have to tap, but at the same time, it's teaching everybody to use their mind so much, and their body too. But once you get all this shit programmed into your brain, it's like second nature. Of course, I'm not near there. I'm not near there yet, but yeah, I mean but MMA has beat out anything. UFC has come so far from when, again, I think we've talked about this, is when, Dad would get the pay-per-view and would send my mom away for the weekend to a hotel, and we'd watch UFC.
Well, what's really sad about I guess the intelligentsia and stuff, they like to think that fighting as sport is on the lower end of the cultural level. And let me explain their point of view, I suppose. I do not agree with it, but their whole thing is I read a sociologist once. He said mixed martial arts or boxing is on the lower end of cultural sport or entertainment. And something like, I don't know, Finnegan's Wake, which is a book by James Joyce, is on the higher end of cultural entertainment. And the whole idea behind it is something like Finnegan's Wake requires you to know a vast amount of cultural knowledge to just appreciate it, which is just kind of ridiculous. I mean, there's a barrier for the average person to even understand Finnegan's Wake, where like something like boxing or MMA, anybody anywhere can grasp the action of fighting. So to a sociologist, he's like, it's on the lower end of cultural achievement. But to me, that doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, sure, I'm inclined to read something like Finnegan's Wake, but I think something like MMA is far more, how do I say it? I mean, it's not more intricate if you consider the intricacies of the novel Finnegan's Wake, but it's more not only down to earth, but it's relevant.
Right.
It's more relevant to everybody. And what's interesting, and
I think it's very intricate, like the physicality and the way.
Well, this is just it. I was going to get into this. We've talked about how MMA is like the distilled version of military, right? Like you have a military excursion, you have a general, and you have an army, etc. But this is just one-on-one physicality.
Right.
And that's where the person who is so exposed to the cultural elements that he's too sophisticated to understand MMA will not be able to not only understand, but appreciate the intricacies of one-on-one fighting. I'd like to come from both. I think there's a balance to be had. you should expose yourself to the higher culture, but you should also never put your nose and snub. You should never have your head so high that you snub these what you think are lower classifications or lower expressions of culture, because MMA is, and I didn't know this as well as I do now until you really showed me the intricacies, and then I absorbed through observation how just meticulous all of it really is. It's like this fine dance. And when you really look at it from that point of view, I think it's a high form of conceptual art. It's like this poetry in motion.
For sure, and especially like in martial arts, man, a lot of them, they're in those martial arts because they want to learn the self-respect. They want to learn respect for other people. And a lot of the times, yeah, they'll talk shit or whatever, but you see them at the end of the fight, they shake hands, they bow, they hug, it's just, it's sportsmanship at its best. And it's also like the
dignity.
It's yeah, and it's on the line every time. It's one-on-one, like you say. It's the new age gladiators, but it's got the spin on where I believe that, like we've said, you have to know so many things to be a champion in MMA. You have to have so much grasp on everything that's going on and every little muscle like movement that you feel on that person, like when you're in a grapple or when you're on the ground or whatever. It's just
right. No, you have an incredible point there. Do you think that the bias of someone who's like in academia, they don't have the appropriate experience to make those connections to the fighting, so they have the appropriate experience to be like, oh, James Joyce, he's an incredible writer because I know what writing is, but they haven't been in the octagon. They haven't fought. They haven't trained in martial arts, so they don't even know what they're looking at. So perhaps it's just an information bias.
Yeah, they probably haven't sold the book either. So
right. So these critics, these people who like to critique and label, and not only label but classify, and then create hierarchical tiers of association between what is good and what is not good.
It sucks because
perhaps they don't know anything.
Well, they think they know.
Right. Perhaps they think they know something.
Well, they think they know, but they don't know. They don't have a clue. They don't. It's crazy how deep everything gets when you're that good of a fighter. Just to be in the UFC, like we're talking about going to see those other fights.
Right.
That would be
the
cool.
underclass.
Well, it's a feeder league, and it'd be cool to see, but
would that be the proper terminology, the underclass? I just kind of threw that out there because I think of the UFC as the class.
Well, it is the highest, the highest peak in MMA right now. Yeah. But there's also, ones that you don't know about that are just as cool. They just have some different rules, and they don't have near the money or the backing or the, any of that to be popular. They just have great fighters. Like, again, it's like feeder leagues. Some of them are really young people that, are just trying to get out and get their name out there, and then they go to the next organization like Bellator or something, and then you get to the UFC. Sometimes they get, like Dana White does that thing. Dana White looking for a fight. He just goes to random places in the US where there's fights like we want to go see, and then he'll go watch the fights, and he'll maybe give somebody a contract at the end of the night. And that's how CM Punk's fighting Mickey Gall is, because Dana White went to the fight with Mickey Gall, And Mickey Gall just tore the dude apart, and then he called CM Punk out. So that's how he got that fight. And that's how he got the UFC contract.
No, and I'm glad that it's growing as a sport because, a lot of boxing has died off. But
it sucks. That sucks, though. But it's true.
Well, they did it to themselves.
No, I mean, there's still boxing. It's still quite prevalent.
It didn't grow, though. It didn't grow with the media. It didn't.
Well, the thing about it is, like, MMA started. There's so much more to learn in MMA every day, or just like, any day of training. Once you get past boxing, like, you can add feet and hands and knees, elbows, ground game, takedowns, submissions, all this shit. You can add all that shit in, and that's just days and days just learning more and more and more and more and more.
Here's the question for you. What is the most lethal fighting style that you know of? And to capitalize on that, what is the most prevalent fighting style in UFC today?
Well, I don't know if you'd say most deadly, because I don't know what the most deadly necessarily is. Because I've heard like Krav Maga is very deadly and stuff like that. But the thing about jiu-jitsu is it was made for the little guy to be able to take down the big guy.
Okay.
It was made to get alavanca, which is leverage. That's Portuguese for leverage. It's all about getting leverage on your opponent. I think it's the thing about fights is you don't want to get into a street fight. You want to get out of a street fight as much as you can. But in like a sanctioned fight, the best base to start out with, we've talked about this, I think, is like wrestling or like or jiu-jitsu or something like that. But wrestling's great to start out as a kid. Anyway. So I think jiu-jitsu, I believe, is probably the best fighting style, technically, I guess, if you have to go to that. But then you have to know strikes too, which a lot of people have grown up as their base, not being wrestling, but being like taekwondo or karate,
right,
or gymnastics. Or like the best thing, like I've heard people say nowadays, is to like be a break dancer when you're young. And like, I mean,
it makes sense. I mean, a lot of people used to joke about professional wrestling or the entertainment side of wrestling. They said the best wrestlers are ballerinas. What they meant by that is choreography and the being fluid with your motion.
mm-hmm.
That translates into unique fighting style and being able to, I'm not saying World Wrestling Entertainment is the MMA, but what I'm saying is learning those skills to be able to choreograph a combination is going to help you out in a real fight. Because if your mind can compute a choreographed combination, you can exercise that combination on your opponent, right?
Yeah,
so those kind of those fields that are not necessarily made for fighting carry over into the realm of mixed martial arts.
Right.
In gymnastics, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Choreograph a technique, execute a technique. What is fighting?
Well, it's just the way you grow up and the way you use your body when you're growing up can really, really bring you great into an MMA world. You know what I mean? Like the way, if you're, like we said, a break dancer, just imagine like the way your hips can move with your feet and your hands and your knees and your elbows, like all together. Like you can control every little piece of your body. And like the head spins that they do when they're breakdancing, like you have to have, and this is funny because they talked kind of about this shit earlier too on a podcast I watched, but you have to have the core, you have to have your whole body has to be able to, you know what I mean, like keep you up while you're spinning vertically. So your legs, your feet, your knees, your elbow, every little piece of muscle in your body is tense, like holding you up vertically while you're spinning. You know what I mean? Like,
No, I see what you mean. And
doing this when you're 12 years old, like it could really bring you into this MMA culture.
I'm going to throw you a curveball here, see how you tackle it. But what about an octagon with a trampoline?
No way.
You don't think you remember? I forget which sport tried to convert basketball into a trampoline sport, but whatever happened? I mean, trampolines.
Somebody
they're
probably
really good
died.
for exercise, but is that just it? Are they too dangerous? Are they too unpredictable? You can't really incorporate them into a sport that is aired on television?
Well, just imagine like double bouncing somebody and then somebody else hitting them in the air and then they just go flying.
It would be like real-time Smash Brothers.
Yeah, it'd be great, but you can't do that.
Right.
We could put that in one of our. This is the league we have to open up, right? It's an all steroid league, so we'll have a baseball league, or
Doping league.
well, it's a doping league. Yeah, so we'll have baseball, football, this new ball in. We should do like. I guess we could do it kind of like basketball. What would you rather do? Not basketball, but what with the trampolines?
I just want to incorporate trampolines to the octagon. I want the mat to be a trampoline, but I want there to be rules. I don't want necessarily a free-for-all. I want there to be an kind of like a joust, okay? Think of the joust. And I think in one podcast I asked why we haven't started air jousting. But hang on.
We should joust.
I kind of want this sparring. I want this air duel. I want a ref in the middle, and then I want the two fighters on one side, and then the ref going, go.
You can only attack in the air.
Yes. They jump at each other. They attack, and then that ends the first round. It's like this turn-based style. I'm inventing a new sport here.
I think it's
Pay heed.
I'm just
folks.
gonna
Write this down. I want a jousting sport that is turn-based MMA with a trampoline floor in the octagon.
I love it. Continue.
And I think, I don't know, 3, 5, 10 rounds. And if you knock same rules apply. If you knock your opponent out, you win.
This is just American Gladiators, right?
I suppose, but I want the MMA. I want the best of the best fighting for this. And I don't know if you call it the
like Justin Timberlake and The Rock, or
not necessarily.
Oh,
but
I get it.
I want guys like Brock Lesnar and Mark Hunt.
Ooh. Can you imagine those two like jumping into each other? Well,
jumping into each other.
Just jousting. No, well, all of
the
it.
Splash damage alone.
But they'd have to wear Velcro suits, right? And the object is to get to the other side of the person's as high as you can on their Velcro board.
And stick to the point.
Yep. We'll call it that. Stick to the point.
Yeah. On this round, the competitors must stick to the point. And what do we mean by that, Chuck? If you look to your right, you have a square board with 5 points in the middle awarded for the MMA fighter that sticks to the point. But really, why haven't
this is judged on a 5-round basis. Tonight's fight is going to be judged on how high you get, how many times you can punch the other guy in the face, and then how many times you can make the other guy get knocked out.
Speaking about how high you get, whenever I'm reading philosophical literature, I always come across these little sentences that say, Immanuel Kant.
Take bong rips, right?
Well, right. But Immanuel Kant was coming from a higher perspective. and I wish I could just edit into the text like a little smoking emoji. Just for interactive reading.
Draw it.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily on the internet, I can do that as long as I properly cite the text. But it is interesting. Why don't we have more wacky innovations of sports?
Because we're all pussies right now. Everybody can't even. Nobody can just worry about
We're all
themselves.
goddamn
anymore.
pussies, man. That's why we can't have fun.
It's true. Everybody's a pussy. Sorry, America.
I can see it.
When you get rid of all them pussies, it's gonna sound like an airplane or a jet taking off. Just don't mind it. It's a screwdriver, toothbrush. Don't worry about it. Okay.
But yeah, and I'd like to get into a totally different subject if you don't mind
Go on.
during this intermission. By now, the listeners are like, well, they're talking about trampoline MMA. Got to go and make a pizza.
What's going on with this trampoline MMA stuff?
But I'd like to talk about something super heavy.
All right. Super heavy. Super heavy alert. Super heavy alert. Super heavy alert.
With Ether Hawkins.
Welcome
So-
to Super Heavy with Mr. Ether Hawkins.
I like to call it super heavy because it reminds me of when I used to be super heavy. But folks, I'm just coming from a point of view that's kind of light, but not really light because I'm kind of trying to incorporate things here and incredible pace for the membranes in your brain to kind of assimilate to the ideas that I'm producing, right? Okay, so anyways, I want to talk about social engineering 101.
Okay.
I want to talk about how technology, through our brain's neuroplasticity, can change genetic expression or reinforce genetic expression and incrementally guide our biological evolution.
We're getting deep here, people.
So anyways,
So
if you
break
think about
that down for people.
and I will right now. So think about software. Everybody's familiar, I hope, by now. What is hardware? Okay, let me just test this out here on Mr. Nick Ritter. What is hardware to you? When I say hardware, what does that constitute?
Well, it could mean like a mouse or a mic that you plug in to the outside of the computer, or it could be the computer itself.
Right, the things that actually give you the content.
Right.
So when I say what is software,
Software would be like the programs you download onto the computer to get that program to be able to have it and to be able to run it.
right. So the hardware runs the software.
Right.
Okay. So software equals cultural evolution. Hardware equals biological evolution. Hardware plus software is a synthesis we call human expression, because when we interact with our technologies, it's an information loop. For instance, on the computer, we are the software. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, we are.
All right. So anyways, as long as the content or software intrigues the human organism, one can predictively program the hardware to reinforce gene expression. And if you study epigenetics, you'll understand where I'm coming from. See, for social engineers, the vice grip, if you can imagine a vice grip now, occurs when the medium or vehicle, so the channel where you get your information, usually the hardware, the medium or vehicle.
Are you there, sir? Are you there, sir? Seem to have lost Mr. Hawkins. Well, this is what happens when you fuck around with the cords. We seem to be having technical difficulties. So, anyway,
Social engineers must.
Mr. Hawkins, we missed you. You were gone for like
Yes.
a minute.
Say that again.
You were gone for like a minute.
I was gone for a minute.
Yeah, you went on your. It's the government, man. They're trying to block us out.
Are you serious?
I am.
Because like I was reading that something I wrote and it cut out, you say.
Yep.
Sure. Where did I leave off?
Literally the very beginning.
Right at the beginning, I was cut out.
Like probably the first 4 sentences I heard.
It's a goddamn conspiracy.
It is.
Anyways, let me, I guess, reiterate what I said. And perhaps, I don't know how the playback will be. I don't know if this is going to be redundant. And I excuse the redundancy, folks. But anyways, and warn me if I go blank again, so I can stop right away.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the content or software intrigues the human organism, one can predictively program the hardware to reinforce gene expression, which is epigenetics if you study that. See, for social engineers, the vice grip, if you can visualize vice grip, occurs when the medium or vehicle, which by the way is another word for the hardware, it's the channel where we get our information. So the vice grip occurs when the medium or vehicle of information creates synergy within the method of sensory engagement created by the information field, or what I call total field of awareness. So all the things accumulated through your 5 senses constitute the total field of awareness. Therefore, the content or software influences perception as the hardware or medium influences physiological reception through repetition. Repetition may condition physiological traits due to the human brain's neuroplasticity. Social engineers must exploit the innate flexibility or adaptability of the human system in order to properly / incrementally program or reprogram human populations. How does that sit with you, Mr. Ritter? And I'll move on from there, but I wanted to reflect on that paragraph.
It's deep.
And two of the things for listeners, look up epigenetics to put that paragraph into context, and look up neuroplasticity. Anything you don't understand, use these platforms that we have in this day and age to understand. That's a great way of engaging with any content. But anyways, moving on. Propaganda, which actually is just programming. All forms of programming is propaganda. All propaganda is programming. Must be total. Education, entertainment, art, etc. The matrix of experience must lean toward desirable genetic expressions, dictated by the information the priest class, or today's scientific social engineers, throughout. Okay, so that's, sorry, let me redo this sentence. The matrix of experience must lean towards desirable genetic expressions, dictated by the information priest class, throughout each phase of civilization. See, the priest class is, for us, the scientific social engineers, but throughout history, they've been different things. Like the Catholic Church was once a priest class. The Egyptian priest class that dictated how the slaves would build the pyramids. They were a priest class. They controlled the minds of the masses, or what was the masses at that time. In evolutionary biology, convergent evolution is the process whereby organisms not closely related independently evolve similar traits as a result of having to adapt to similar environments or ecological niches.
Right.
Now, what I'm saying by that is we can intelligently design our environments and our ecological niches, right? So we can actually dictate through convergent biology where organisms go evolutionarily. And here's an example. Facebook. It reorganizes your human sensory semantics. And when I say human sensory semantics, I mean the logic of how you process your sensory inputs and outputs. So the things coming in and how you organize it in your brain, that is the logic, the semantics of your senses. So sensory semantics. While the information schematic reinforces participation. See, I see Facebook, the program, as a schematic. If you know what a schematic is, it's a diagram. It's a sort of a electrical blueprint, right?
The blueprints.
Video games, television, environmental stimuli, information fields interactively change cultural and biological expression. Consumption habits, all forms of information, tangible, intangible, must be conditioned. And if you really want to go further into this, this includes food and drink, because that's just more tangible information. If you really think about food and drink as a molecular composition, you know what I'm saying? I'm sure Mr. Ritter knows what I'm saying. He knows that you are what you eat.
Definitely.
And this goes with other forms of information. As to work with and this is all to work with the desired genetic expression the social engineer wants to see. Example 2. Okay, so I went completely modern with Facebook. That was my first example. Let me go with a very ancient example so people kind of understand how there's this loop with everything we create. Example 2. Paleolithic art. And for example, I used the Venus figurines or the Venus of Willendorf, which is a Paleolithic little artifact. If you look it up on Google, it's this little artifact that kind of, at least scholars suggest, signifies fertility. And it was this ritual rites that Paleolithic people held. Anyways, so these Venus figurines, Paleolithical art, tend to be externalized forms which reflect the inner life of the artist. So whoever created the art form, it's reflecting their inner thoughts, right? It's an extension of their thoughts manifested in material reality. Once you externalize something, it can program other folks that knowingly and unknowingly internalize its form. This information loop, or system of biomimicry, if you will, can be described as one holographic schematic, because I see kind of our interaction in society as this sphere, a holographic schematic. Each human is plugged in, interfacing with the environment or information field, and shan't be separate from its content, or shall not be separate from its content, software and hardware, etc. The sum of the working parts produce the genetic variation. Language can be described as a virus because it can fundamentally change or influence the internal life, the realm of ideas, eventually reshaping the will and action of each human organism. Stone sculptures, like the Venus figurines, produce the same effect. So I'm saying that all artifacts, whether it be Facebook, whether it be a Paleolithic stone structure, all the way to language, change our ideas and therefore shape our will and action.
Yeah, I mean,
And
you got it spot on, 100%.
And I will support this in the end with a scientific study, but also my own little exodane strategy here. The perpetual reverberation within the quantum field of information, the spectrum of light or primordial energy, programming all participants experiencing the holographic schematic called conscious existence. So this perpetual reverberation within the field of existence is a constant programming, because we're actively existing within this realm.
Right.
We are reiterations of everything, and I mean everything, that came before now. this very moment now, which is out of date by the time you listen to it, unless you're listening to it live. Therefore, it is now, as I prescribe it to be. The pinnacle of our dimension's time and space information collision. One fine balance of conductive willpower and informative determinism. I say conductive willpower because I'm going with this metaphor or analogy of life being a holographic schematic where we're plugged in to the wiring of exchange of energy. Anyways, take some time to consider the program before materialized distractions take over your operating system. I know it's difficult to confront this thing because we are mentally excited and momentarily suspended above death for now. And to add a capstone for the physiological potency of our artifacts. New research presented at this year's World Congress of Anesthesiologists, the WCA, in Hong Kong, August 28th to September 2nd, shows that allowing children to use iPads to distract them before surgery requiring general anesthesia is as effective at lowering their anxiety as conventional sedatives. And I'll leave it at that. And the science is there. But the point is, the medium really is the massage. And we are reprogramming our physiological responses by engaging or interacting / interfacing with all technological mediums.
Yep.
And that is the end of my lecture. Thank you.
That has been heavy. What was it? Super heavy or
Super heavy moments with Ether Hawkins.
Yeah, it's some good shit, man.
But yeah, I mean, those are some things I think about.
That's what I think about at 4 in the afternoon. So,
but yeah, man, episode 23. I can't believe that we're this far into the episodes.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, man.
And I still beat myself up because I think we should be doing video by now. But I know that we're busy. And we have to collaborate on this. We have to get there. We have to, really build that platform before we unleash something on the World Wide Web. We kind of we wing. Oh, well, I don't know if I want to disclose this to the public, but we wing these episodes, folks. We don't write this down. We just go. We just do. We are Nike.
Duh.
We just do it.
We're above Nike.
We are above Nike.
They want to do us.
Of course, the National Reconnaissance Agency is above everything. But that's beyond the point. We need to move into the film, and I think,
first of all, what do you think about football being back on? I'm ready to watch my team. I'm ready to watch my team kick the other team's ass.
I've lost interest in the gridiron. I think it's because of the fantasy football. I'll keep on blaming fantasy football, but
yeah, that's a big part of it, though.
I just don't want to. I don't want to talk about football to people who are obsessed with statistics.
Yeah, the numbers side of everything. I just want to watch football.
Watch football, cheer for your team. See, the thing about fantasy football is it breaks down the purpose of the nationalistic or statist point of view. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
people used to go, hey, I'm a big fan of the Vikings. Well, fantasy football rolled along. They weren't a fan of anything anymore. They were a fan of players and statistics.
Right.
And that bothers me.
It takes away the teams.
Yeah, and that was the whole purpose behind it for me anyways. Maybe I'm just a fuddy-duddy.
Who's to say we can't just keep watching it like we want to, but at the same time, you always have people like that in the room, usually, unless you watch it by yourself or here at the studio and we don't let anybody in.
Right. No, and I don't know, and they've never went pay-per-view with football, which is good, but I don't know. It's just that whole fantasy thing. I like to get into hockey. I feel like hockey is the last sport that is yet to be perverted.
It's getting there.
Really? How so?
They're about to stop fighting in hockey, I think.
Oh, I suppose. That would be quite the change, actually.
But
they love that shit, too. They're honorable.
Well, you can't, like, so now what you're not allowed to take off your helmet. So now what they'll do is, like, they'll throw the gloves down and they'll take each other's helmets off, and then they'll just start going at it.
Oh, wow. See, that's shit. I mean, if people want to talk about the gridiron, football being a gladiator sport, I think hockey is the very last of the truly North American sports that
team gladiator,
team oriented. Exactly. No, you're 100% right. Team gladiator sport. That's it. Well said.
It's true. I've heard that we used to play with Canadian heads as the puck.
Back in my day.
It's kind of funny.
Well, yeah. How are you feeling about wrapping episode 23 up? What would you like to suggest to the audience? You know, like,
I would like to suggest one thing, and it's to go on YouTube and go watch Donald Cerrone's 4-hit like combo to knock out the other dude, to knock out Rick Story. Just find it. It's the most beautiful combo I've ever, like, pretty much ever seen in my life.
Well, you know, Ether Hawkins, I'm with her. So I would like to advise the audience to go to Donald Trump videos and try to make as many nasty comments as possible.
Okay, well, maybe you can do that too.
But no, go with his suggestion. Mine was just a sarcastic ploy.
It's a ploy to get rid of
goddamn ploy.
To get rid of the people that don't like talking bad about Trump.
Yeah, as the election gets closer, we're gonna have to get a little bit, you know, in depth with that shit. But
we're gonna have people.
For now, we'll leave it alone.
We're gonna have people there. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, when is Mr. Mr. Sam coming back?
Eventually, but he's doing the old politics thing right now. So
the old politics.
Yep. Gotta like put in your 2 weeks a year, you know.
He's a new sphere magician.
I like it, man. He's one of them magicians, man.
He's like, hey man, pay attention to my right hand. He's doing something tricky with the left.
Misconceptions, that's what you call it. It's not misconceptions, it's misdirection.
You ever see the video of George Bush saying to an audience, he's like, in my field, in my line of work, see, you have to say things over and over again. Say it over and over again until it sinks in and becomes true. And I was like, what? Did he just say that? Of course he did.
That's hilarious.
I also advise the audience to check out any of the State Department videos recently. There's been just a smorgasbord of craziness, like
aliens, man.
Goddamn aliens, man! They're crashing the set. Not that drastic, but hopefully in the future. But yeah, some of the stuff in the State Department, like some dude, I forget, he's like addressing a bunch of newcomers and he's about to retire, and one of the journalists asks, he goes, so blah blah blah, and then he's like, this is an exercise in democracy, and then he just starts laughing, and then he's like, you can tell this is my last day. And then the journalist, after he said this is an exercise in democracy, he starts laughing. The journalist in the background goes, so that's what it is. But anyways, there's a lot of mishaps going on right now because nobody watched C-SPAN, right? The mainstream media is not covering up, or I guess they are covering up, but they're not covering any of these mishaps, these missteps. So you can catch this shit on C-SPAN, and nobody's talking about it. I mean, I saw a journalist ask a State Department official who was clearly reading from a script. We all know they read from scripts.
Oh yeah.
And they kept asking her the same question, and she kept giving them the same answer that was irrelevant. And then eventually some dude from Reuters or something said, "Am I not speaking English? Do you not understand English?" I mean, that stuff is hilarious, but at the same time, that's just, are we really that far? Are we that far into that that field of dishonesty?
Yeah,
I guess we are.
Well, it's crazy because the thing about dishonesty nowadays is like people love it. Like
It's too easy.
Well, like cheating on their significant other. Like it's like I hate to say it, but in a lot of songs, it's like you can cheat on your man or your woman or whatever, and get with me. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
It sucks that it's being glorified.
Well, it's exactly. No, you hit it. You know, and if we have more time, I'd like to touch on this. The cultural reinforcements.
Yep.
Like you're saying, it's glorifying it. You're seeing it over and over again. I mean, have you watched some of the more provocative music videos recently?
No.
They're so far. I mean, it's basically softcore porn.
I bet.
We're so far into that. Like, okay, let me think here. Anaconda by Nicki Minaj.
I haven't seen it.
That is softcore porn, but it's reinforcing this hypersexualization of culture. But then,
right,
combined with the whole dishonesty is sexy, dishonesty is intelligent, you get what you're talking about.
Right.
The reinforcement of lying being cool, and that's a whole different can of worms. But
all right, man. So this has been the Auditory Osmosis, episode number 23, with your hosts, Mr. Ether Hawkins.
I'm not a man. I'm not a woman. Don't call me man. Don't call me woman. Call me something else, like a fluffy penguin.
And I'm Nick Ritter. You can call me Nick Ritter. It's cool with me.
He's traditional. He's old school.
It's time to blast off into the next universe. Y'all have a good evening.
Take care now, you hear?